The concert hall in downtown Toronto was silent, not the calm kind, but the tense kind that happens right before people decide whether to clap or laugh. On stage stood Maya Ellis, a 17-year-old deaf girl with a shy posture but eyes that burned with quiet fire. She faced a crowd filled with wealthy patrons, music teachers, and students from elite art schools, all staring at her with barely hidden doubt. One of them, Lena Crawford, a top violinist and the daughter of the school's director, leaned over to her friend and whispered loudly, "A deaf composer? What's next, a blind painter?" The audience chuckled, their laughter echoing through the hall. Maya didn't flinch. She couldn't hear them, but she could feel the vibrations of their mockery through the floor. The orchestra behind her looked uneasy. They'd practiced for weeks under Maya's direction, but even they weren't sure what to expect. Then, the lights dimmed. Maya placed her hands gently on the edge of the piano, not to play, but to feel. The conductor nodded at her, waiting for her signal. And with a small, graceful motion, she tapped the podium twice, the cue to begin. The first note rang out, soft, haunting, like the beginning of a storm. Then came the strings, deep and emotional, building slowly. Within seconds, the audience fell silent again, not from mockery, but from awe. It was unlike anything they had ever heard. The melody told a story of pain, struggle, and triumph, a voice from silence itself. Lena's smug grin faded as tears filled her eyes. The music was powerful, raw, and heartbreakingly beautiful. When the final note hit, the hall stood frozen. Maya turned slowly, her hands trembling. She couldn't hear the standing ovation that followed, but she saw it. She saw the tears, the faces, the mouths shouting her name. Even Lena stood up, clapping through tears. It was poetic justice, a deaf girl composing a symphony that silenced her doubters. But how did she get here? How did a girl who couldn't hear the sound of her own name create a masterpiece that shook an entire city? To understand that, we have to go back to where it all began. Back to 3 years earlier. Maya was 14 when she transferred to Mapleview High, a small-town school just outside Toronto. Her mother, a single parent and nurse, had moved them there hoping for better opportunities. But the students weren't kind. They teased her for her sign language, mimicking her gestures and calling her "mute girl." Teachers often overlooked her talent because of her disability. The only person who saw her potential was Mr. Daniel, the school's aging music teacher. He once told her, "Music isn't about hearing, Maya, it's about feeling. And you feel deeper than most of us ever could." That sentence Maya started sneaking into the music room after school, touching the piano to feel the vibrations. She'd close her eyes and sense the notes through her fingertips. She watched other players, memorizing rhythm through sight and sensation. Over time, she began composing on an old laptop, using visual waveforms to create melodies she couldn't hear, but could see. Her songs began spreading online. Someone uploaded her work anonymously, and soon, she became known as the silent composer. But not everyone was impressed. When Lena Crawford found out that the mysterious composer getting attention was the deaf girl from her class, she felt humiliated. "That's not real music," Lena scoffed one day in class. "She just clicks random buttons." The students laughed. But Maya just looked at her, not with anger, but quiet resolve. Because she knew something Lena didn't. She was working on something bigger. Something that would one day make the whole world listen, even those who once laughed. And that day was coming sooner than anyone expected. The day of the National Youth Symphony Showcase arrived, one of the biggest music events in Canada, held at the Royal Conservatory Hall in Toronto. The best young talents from across the country were competing, and the audience was filled with music critics, media outlets, and sponsors. Maya had been invited after her online compositions went viral, though most assumed it was a publicity stunt, a deaf girl composer, made for good headlines, but few believed she'd actually perform. Even her old rival, Lena Crawford, was there, representing her prestigious academy. She smirked when she saw Maya walk in with her tablet and digital keyboard. "You really think this sympathy act will work here?" Lena sneered, her violin slung confidently over her shoulder. "This isn't your little high school stage anymore." Maya didn't respond. She couldn't hear her, but she could read her lips, and more importantly, feel her arrogance. When Maya's turn came, the audience buzzed with curiosity. The judges exchanged skeptical looks. A deaf composer performing live? The lights dimmed. Maya stood center stage, closed her eyes, and placed her fingers lightly on her digital keyboard. A subtle hum of vibration spread beneath her skin, her only connection to sound. Then she began. The first few notes were soft, hesitant, like whispers of snow falling on glass. But then, the rhythm shifted, growing into something powerful and alive. Strings joined in. Percussion built. It wasn't just music, it was a heartbeat. Every note told her story, the bullying, the loneliness, the years of silence, the fire that burned in her chest when no one believed in her. The crowd sat frozen. Even Lena's bow hovered mid-air, forgotten. As the symphony reached its climax, the screen behind Maya lit up with visuals synced to the vibrations, waves of color pulsing in rhythm with every note. The audience could see the music, just as Maya felt it. When the final crescendo hit, the hall shook. Then silence. For one long, breathtaking moment, no one moved. Then, a roar of applause exploded. People stood, clapping, crying, shouting her name. Maya. 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 She looked out into the crowd, her heart pounding. She couldn't hear the sound, but she could see the impact. Tears streamed down Lena's face. She walked onto the stage slowly, clutching her violin, and mouthed the words. "I was wrong." Maya smiled, signing back, "Music doesn't need ears, just a heart." A few weeks later, Maya's story was everywhere: news outlets, YouTube, music blogs, even national TV. Major companies reached out to sponsor her upcoming projects. She was invited to speak at schools across Canada, where she told her story through interpreters. Her viral video, titled "The Silent Symphony," broke records, becoming one of the most watched performances in Canadian digital history. But what touched people most wasn't the fame or the applause, it was what she represented. That even in silence, you can make the world listen. Before leaving the stage that night, Maya turned to the audience one last time, placed her hand on the piano, and whispered, though she couldn't hear it herself. "This is for everyone who was told they couldn't." The crowd rose again. It was more than a performance. It was a revolution. And it started with a deaf girl who refused to stay silent.